Welcome to When Gen X Ruled the Multiplex, the films that shaped the MTV generation. One hallmark of being a kid or a teen growing up in the US in the 1980s is that we all knew way too much about John Stamos, long before he shot to sitcom fame on Full House. He'd been on General Hospital for a stretch, and he'd co-starred with Jamie Gertz and a bunch of other bright young things on a short-lived CBS sitcom called Dreams, but thanks largely to teen magazines, he had a level of name recognition amongst young Gen Xers that surpassed his actual body of work. In 1986, there was an attempt to catapult Stamos up to the next rung in the fame ladder with a starring role in his very first film, Never Too Young to Die. Never Too Young to Die was written by Stephen Paul and Anthony Fouts, and was directed by Gil Bettman, who was a producer on an awful lot of highly entertaining crap television shows in the 70s and 80s, including Knight Rider, the Hardy Boys' Nancy Drew Mysteries, and the sci-fi cop series Automan, which was only around for a nanosecond in the early 80s, but which I loved. I'm making a mental note to hunt down Automan episodes and see if it lives up to my childhood memories. My suspicion is no, but I would love to be pleasantly surprised. We open in Los Angeles, where a raucous gang of leather-clad punk bikers assemble at the Big Tahunga Dam. They're addressed by their leader, the splendidly named Velvet von Ragnar, who announces an ambitious plan to hold the city hostage by threatening to poison the water supply. Ragnar has all the information about the plan on a computer disk, which has been stolen. Ragnar, who is played by KISS frontman Gene Simmons, is a hermaphrodite, i.e. someone who has both male and female sex organs. This portrayal is handled by the filmmaker with the precise level of informed sensitivity that one would expect from a trashy and exploitative 1980s B-movie. Yes, of course, it's all wildly inappropriate, but no one is going to get blindsided by this film's offensive content. It's baked right into the premise. Ragnar interrogates a bound and scantily clad woman who has stolen the computer disk. From a pendant she wears as an earring, Ragnar determines that she gave the disk to a top-secret agent named Stargrove. As the crowd calls for blood, Ragnar kills the woman by slashing her with a long, sharp fingernail. At a school gym, a student named Lance Stargrove, the hunky young son of the aforementioned secret agent, does flips on a trampoline under the approving gaze of his gymnastics coach. After the U.S. men's national gymnastics team took home gold in the 1984 Olympics in Los Angeles, there was a brief moment in film in the mid-80s where male gymnasts were all the rage. In addition to Never Too Young to Die, there was 1986's American Anthem, starring Olympian Mitch Gaylord, and 1985's Gymkata, starring Olympian Kurt Thomas. I am a big fan of adding gymnastics to action films whenever possible because there is no such thing as a fight scene that can't be improved by the addition of acrobatic flips. John Stamos, who plays Lance, is not an Olympic caliber gymnast, but at least he and his stunt double do a decent job throughout the film of making Lance seem flexible. The music in Never Too Young to Die really isn't all that memorable, but this scene is scored to a peppy tune called Stargrove, sung by Tommy Lee Bradley, which really makes me want a theme song called Morgan, which plays behind me everywhere I go. In class, Lance uses his calculator wristwatch to cheat on his chemistry test by transmitting messages to his roommate Cliff. Cliff is played by Peter Kwong, best known for playing Rain in John Carpenter's Big Trouble in Little China. Cliff, who is scientifically inclined, has invented many wondrous contraptions, including a laser-powered flamethrower, which he calls a fire blazer. Back at the dam, we finally meet Lance's father, Drew Stargrove, who is a dashing secret agent employed by a never-identified spy agency. Stargrove is played by George Lazenby, best known for playing James Bond in a single film, 1969's On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Here, Lazenby is billed as special guest star George Lazenby, which is odd because films do not have guest stars, but Never Too Young to Die plays by its own rules. Drew's assignment is to thwart Ragnar's scheme to poison the dam. One of his men, a man named Carruthers, who, if you're paying attention, looks an awful lot like Ragnar dressed in a wig and fake beard, pulls a double cross and shoots him. An injured Stargrove is ambushed by heavily armed punks who kill the remaining member of his team. Stargrove is confronted by Ragnar, who demands the stolen disc. Stargrove tries to fight his way out, but is eventually hunted down and killed by Ragnar. At his father's funeral, Lance, who believes his father was an ordinary businessman, spots a beautiful and mysterious woman named Danja Deering. Danja is played by Prince's protege Vanity, lead singer of the girl group Vanity 6. Vanity, who died in 2016, was named Denise Matthews at birth, and she changed her name at Prince's suggestion. Actually, the name Vanity was a compromise. Prince originally wanted her to change her name to Vagina, true story, and Denise Matthews said, maybe not. Prince was a pretty savvy businessman and a visionary who was always a step or two ahead of the latest trends, But in this case, I think Denise probably made the right call. The world of 1986 might not have been ready for a mainstream pop star named Vagina. Lance inherits a farm in Ojai from his father. At the farm, Danja is attacked in the barn by a pair of muscle-bound punks, including this dude with great hair named Pyramid, who is played by wrestler/bodybuilder Ed Brock. They demand the disc from her. Lance arrives and wanders into the fray, giving Danja time to beat up the punks, blowing the barn to pieces in the process. Carruthers arrives at the farm looking for Danja. Not realizing he betrayed Drew Stargrove to his death, Danja meets with him and tells him about her plan to take in Ragnar's nightclub act at a club called the Incinerator. The Incinerator turns out to be a fabulous glam rock/punk biker bar that could only exist in a trashy film from 1986. Punks ride around inside the club on motorcycles with metal unicorn heads welded to the handlebars, and cocktails come served in oil cans. Some people call it a gimmicky mess, but we can call it paradise. Danja, who is dressed to kill, orders a Bloody Mary and a cigar because it's that kind of club and she's that kind of woman. Ragnar takes the stage dressed in a glitzy, skimpy showgirl outfit and rips into a show-stopping number that includes the lyrics, "It takes a man like me to be a woman like me." A quick round of applause for the woman who showed up for a night of unspeakable debauchery at a glitzy, seedy, sleazy punk bar dressed in jeans and a Mickey Mouse sweatshirt. Danja tells Lance Ragnar killed his father, and then Lance baselessly accuses her of sleeping with his dad, so Danja slaps him and storms out of the club. Yeah, Lance is mired in deep grief over his father's death, and he's probably still stunned to find out that his dad was a secret agent. So he's not at his best right now, but he still spends most of the film acting like a major jackhole. Lance heads backstage and pretends to be Ragnar's #1 fan. Ragnar, who is no fool, recognizes Lance as Stargrove's hunky son, but makes a game attempt to seduce him anyway. This is just good common sense. Lance is annoying, but he's super cute. Lance secretly plants a listening device in a unicorn head hanging on the wall. After Lance leaves, Ragnar promptly finds the bug and flushes it down the toilet. The traitorous Carruthers gives Danja the location of Ragnar's secret hideout. Lance and Danja indulge in a long and pointless chase scene, and then the chase is joined by members of Ragnar's gang on motorcycles who attack them with axes and maces. Danja drives her Corvette under a semi-truck for protection, which is a pretty slick move, while the gang members do their best to kill Lance. Danja saves Lance's bacon, Lance apologizes for being such a dick to her, and then they're ambushed and overwhelmed by more punks with medieval weapons. Lance is taken to the Ojai farmhouse, where a pair of punks brutally interrogate him for the location of the stolen disc. Lance ultimately puts his mad gymnastics skills to good use, and he forces one of the punks to tell him where they're keeping Danja and tosses them out the window. Lance discovers a glowing light beneath the floor. He deposits a pendant emblazoned with the Stargrove family crest in a slot in the floorboards, which reveals a staircase down into his father's secret lair. Cliff, suspecting his roommate is in trouble, shows up at the farm armed with his fire blazer. It turns out Cliff is in possession of the disc, which Lance's father mailed to their dorm room, and which contains Ragnar's plan for dumping radioactive waste into the water supply. Cliff and Lance grab a bunch of weapons and head off to rescue Danja. At Ragnar's secret lair in the dam, a scientist named Riley, played by Robert Englund, best known as Freddy Krueger in the Nightmare on Elm Street films, explains the plan to poison the water. Cliff and Lance raid an abandoned factory where Danja is being tortured for information by Ragnar's thugs. With the help of Cliff's fire blazer, they viciously slaughter a bunch of thugs and rescue Danja. Lance, Danja, and Cliff meet with Drew Stargrove's former supervisor Arliss, played by John Anderson, and with Carruthers, whom they still don't realize is a traitor. Carruthers proposes setting a trap for Ragnar using Lance and Danja as bait. So Lance and Danja hang out at the farm, waiting for Ragnar to make a move on them. Lance and Danja make out for a while, probably out of boredom because they don't seem to like each other very much. And then Lance complains about his daddy issues, which ruins whatever semi-romantic mood they had going on. Danja ultimately resorts to whipping off her clothes and smearing suntan lotion all over herself, which finally inspires Lance to jump her bones. They enthusiastically boink, while Cliff and Carruthers and some other members of this weirdly non-specific spy organization wait outside for Ragnar to ambush them. Ragnar's henchman Pyramid steals the disc from Cliff, while Carruthers whisks Danja and Lance away from the farm in a helicopter. In the helicopter, Carruthers reveals himself to be Ragnar in disguise, which will not come as a surprise to most viewers because Gene Simmons is not all that easy to disguise, but points for trying. Ragnar, who now has possession of the disc, takes Lance and Danja to the dam and encourages his punks to molest them. Lance challenges Pyramid to a one-on-one duel by hurling a bunch of homophobic slurs at him. He gets hold of a gun and shoots his way to freedom, then frees Danja as well. While stuff blows up in a big and borderline nonsensical climax, Ragnar prepares to poison the water supply. Lance trails him, and he and Ragnar battle on the top of the dam, during which, not kidding, Lance bites Ragnar squarely on the tit. Ragnar dangles Lance over the side of the dam dam, so Lance makes a last-ditch effort to save his life by trying to seduce Ragnar. This works pretty well, and as they go in for the kiss, Lance tosses Ragnar over the dam. There are only a few seconds remaining before radioactive waste is released into the water supply. Lance throws Ragnar's computer up into the air, then tosses Cliff's fireblazer after it to blow up the computer, which somehow saves the day. The film ends with Arliss unsuccessfully trying to recruit Lance and Cliff into the spy service, then Lance, Cliff, and Danja speed off into the sunset together. Never Too Young to Die was intended to launch a film franchise of the continuing adventures of Lance Stargrove, hunky acrobatic super spy. That didn't happen because, well, this film is terrible. It fizzled at the box office, and critics and audiences hated it. And yet, it has an undeniable charm. Full House would premiere on ABC the following year and finally transform John Stamos into a bankable star, but I would happily trade the entire blandly mediocre multi-season run of Full House for a handful of tasteless and terrible Never Too Young to Die sequels any day, no question. Never Too Young to Die is sleazy, stupid, ill-advised trash, and bless it for that. If I had to pick a single adjective to describe this film, I'd go with horny. Everything about this film, from an early scene where a pair of wrestlers harass and intimidate Lance for no particular reason, to the big climax where Lance and Ragnar almost end up deep-tonguing at the Big Tahunga Dam, is wildly overheated with sexual energy. Only you can decide whether you consider this a drawback or a selling point. Nobody is especially good in this film, though due credit to Gene Simmons for throwing himself into the role, especially compared to Stamos and Vanity, who appear to have these occasional glimmers of self-respect that prevent them from fully committing to this ludicrous material. The storyline is nonsensical, but for a B-movie, that's fine. Everything moves quickly enough that viewers really don't have time to stop down and think about how nothing that's happening on the screen really holds up to scrutiny. I have more of an issue with the dialogue, which is the film's biggest liability. One of John Stamos' clear strengths, apart from his good looks, is his inherent likability, which is what cemented his place as one of America's top sitcom stars for almost a decade. And that likability comes through at times in Never Too Young to Die, but that's despite the best efforts of the script to make Lance seem like a mouthy, smarmy, unlikable jerk. Protagonists don't need to be likable, but in the case of Never Too Young to Die, where so much of the film's success hinges upon the appeal of its leading man, the film would have been better served if there'd been more of an attempt to make Lance sympathetic and endearing. Still, there is much to love about this cinematic monstrosity. The entire sequence set at the incinerator, with Velvet Von Ragnar stepping out in feathers and sequins while glamorous punks ride their motorcycles around inside the bar, is an 80s B-movie Shangri-La. Everything about this film is ludicrously over the top and endearingly cheesy, and if you go in for that kind of thing, you will probably have a pretty good time watching it. Next time, we are going beyond Thunderdome with Mel Gibson and Tina Turner in the third installment in the Mad Max franchise. Thank you for hanging in there with me, and I will see you then.